Hi, everybody. It's Achilles Justice here with the Philosophy Society. It is November 6th, 2024. It's a Wednesday, and we are in the Toronto Metropolitan University Library. Yes, Donald Trump was elected the President of the United States. So it's important that it was peaceful. I didn't hear about anything crazy going on. There was maybe a bomb threat or something like that in one of the polling stations. But, predominantly we saw a peaceful voting situation for everybody and the people to elect Donald Trump. So I'm happy for them. If that's what they want, then I want the best for them. Right?
Agreed.
That's all you can ask for. And it's not about one specific party member or the other. It's just the general process of the thing.
Yep.
And I may disagree with some things for sure. Like there are some serious criticisms. I think that not really anybody has responded to when it comes to some of the things that Donald Trump has said and or done. And so that's not philosophical, it's uncritical, right? Like, for example, just the sweeping claim that all of Donald Trump's criminal charges are fraudulent and were just used as a weaponization because he's a political rival. I don't think that holds much water. I think that it's important to just look at the evidence and look at the charges that were brought against him and then see if there's any merit to what was said, right? In contrast to like Elon Musk, SpaceX being charged with not hiring asylum seekers, but then it's also illegal to hire non-permanent residents. So that's contradictory in the nature of itself. So it just doesn't make sense, right? And so, yeah, do you guys have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I'm just curious, and I could, somebody will predict Trump won, but it's why he won so sweeping, what's that, 295 to 227?
No, it's 300 plus.
Yeah, something like that.
310.
That's like the biggest, margin in the recent elections. Why is that? Why is that he won so convincingly?
I think that he, like, some positive attributes for him, on one side, you could look at them as just him being like very narcissistic, but at the same time, he does show some resilience when it comes to criticism and all of the allegations that went against him. And then as Elon Musk pointed out, when he was shot, he just responded saying, fight, fight, fight. So he does have this perception of strength. And for leadership, people want, that's like a very fundamental attribute. And it can be an illusion of confidence, but I think that Donald Trump stood the test of time and showing that he has some sense of confidence, whether it's misplaced or not, it doesn't really matter, right? And I think that people are scared of China, of Xi Jinping, not the Chinese people, but just the government, and also Russia. And Trump, choosing him, it definitely will. Again, depending on your stance on Russia, like if he just expects Ukraine to concede and to allow Russia to just take whatever they want, that's not really good, right? So there's lots that we can talk about. I hope that to be hopeful is to say that like maybe a lot of the things we don't like, he just said it as an entertainment thing to kind of like fuck with people or to like get certain obscure votes, and he really doesn't intend on following through with those things.
Like the Ukraine war, he said he was going to end it in 24 hours. Maybe people.
It's already 24 hours.
I mean, no, he hasn't taken office.
Oh no,
he has to be president.
That's right.
He said after he takes office, he's going to end it in 24 hours.
Now it's in 2 weeks.
I think in the real context, the most important now is economical war. We have in the BRICS, India, China, Brazil, and what is happening with the dollar. What about inflation? It's many factors, and in this time, that many wars, Ukraine, Israel, perhaps in China and Taiwan. So the world now is a new era is coming. People want not a politician, a warrior, and Trump is a typical warrior. It's like Ronald Reagan. So someone strong to fight. So it's one of the reasons.
Yeah, and certainly, like you said, when he got shot at, the fight, he gives this persona that he can, overcome anything. And there's been so many things thrown at him, right? Like the criminal charges, everything. And from whatever, he just seems to bounce back. Like no matter what you throw at him, he just comes back.
Yeah, and that's a good personality trait. It's just that there are some serious concerns about the January 6th thing.
Yes,
And
yeah.
then, like, there's a whole bunch of things that it's like, if it was just a different guy that just didn't do those things, or at least if you did those things and you're like, hey, like I was a little hot-headed on January 6th. I'm sorry that I didn't, like you could have said something,
He didn't. He never
I know.
say- he never-
I mean, had this election gone the other way around and he lost, he probably would have done the same thing again. He said, he
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
gonna accept
for
it.
sure. Yeah.
Because Democrats said that the January 6th is a fundamental threat
Yeah.
to the democracy system.
Of course. And I think that what happens is like, and Elon Musk made this comment. It's like almost like whoever smelt it dealt it for kids. Like if someone smells the fart, they're the ones that farted, but it's not true, right? So just because the Democrats are calling him a fascist, it's not true to say that the one who cries fascist wolf or cries fascism is the fascists themselves. Yeah, it's just, and that's why it's like when we're using our critical thinking skills, we don't want to just overgeneralize or have an all or nothing approach towards people. There's some things they say that are good, some things that they say that may not be good. And the way that we determine them is to evaluate the argument on its own, right? Not just take one thing and then generalize the person's character or label them and say that that is a representative of their character in general or in its entirety. And so there are things about Jordan Peterson I completely disagree with and don't. I agree with Richard Dawkins that he's drunk on symbols, doctor or none, and I don't agree with his religious perspectives on things. I do agree with some things he's raised about the gender pay gap, for example, right? That men take more dangerous jobs, they work longer hours. And so I can evaluate that, and it's reasoning based on evidence, right? And then we can look at the legitimacy of that evidence. And so I don't think it's good that Jordan Peterson retracted his psychological kind of evaluation of Trump. Like he's kind of just trying to stay, he's concerned about how Trump perceives him and what he's saying about him, which means that you're not being truthful and honest. And so a lot of these guys, these interviewers, when they would have Trump on, they just won't ask questions. Or like when Tucker Carlson's talking to Putin, he's not being real about stuff. And that, again, is unphilosophical. Just because you allow someone to just say whatever rhetoric they want and you don't engage with them in some manner, i.e. asking certain questions and stuff and asking them to back up what they're saying, then it's just really, what is the purpose of this interview? They could just take a selfie and just ramble on and then turn it off, right?
So what do you think is a slogan? Make America great. This is patriot.
Yeah, make the world reasonable. Like this.
But it's something backed.
Yeah.
Because now is like in a wartime, and you say many times, make America great, USA. This is patriot. This is something people.
He's got all the X factors. He's got too many of them. He even showed up on Joe Rogan's podcast. He showed up on all the other podcasts that Kamala would not show up on. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw the Joe Rogan podcast with Trump.
It's not part of it.
With Elon, but
Yeah.
Joe said that Kamala said that she would do the podcast if he flew there and he only had 45 minutes. So you could tell she only wanted to say her talking points. Trump stayed on for 2.5 hours. It's really hard to get through bullshit if you're having a 2.5 hour conversation.
It depends on what you talk about too, though.
Come on, man. Like we know what the deal was with Kamala. 45 minutes. Come
Which I'm
fly
not.
here.
Yeah, that sucks for her.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, right? Like she's not being, like if she's not allowing herself, and we don't know her schedule. She's currently the vice president. I'm just saying, like, but she's giving something up. If she's not going to communicate about her positions and explicate what those mean,
Just have a conversation, normal conversation. People want to see that. They just want to see the dude or the girl, whoever is going to be a normal person. Not a politician, true character, a normal person. Just have a conversation. He went on Milk Boys. Trump went on Milk Boys. Yeah, you didn't know that?
I never knew that.
These are these kids that are, Mississauga.
really,
Yeah.
they're from Mississauga.
Yeah, and their audience is like 17-year-old boys to like 20-year-old. Like they're. He just had a normal conversation.
Is it a
with some
Canadian
kids.
podcast?
I think they're American now, but they're massive.
These are like pranks and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recently?
Yeah, recently.
Oh,
Well, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, so I want to ask, from a psychology point of view,
Mm.
because Trump has identified with that narcissistic character.
Sure.
So how does this narcissistic character will affect a world leader? Would that cause some very dangerous or disaster effect because even narcissistic. Because narcissism is very difficult to, as I heard, from the psychology, Kahoot has a theory. Actually, basically, the traditional Freudian way cannot cure narcissistic. Narcissistic has a
Well, there's not really any.
right. So
Like,
I'm just
treatment.
my question is that a narcissistic leader, how that how much danger is that?
Well, I think narcissists would generally gravitate towards leadership roles because you're in a position of superiority, right? And you're easily going to get the center of attention, which are two properties of the disorder. It's real. Well, just look at the disorder, and like, so there's something called the CEO disease, where people in positions of leadership are less likely to get feedback from their subordinates because of fear of reprisal or being punished for bringing bad news. And so if you're a narcissist, that's going to be even more of a problem, right? Just as a hierarchical salient phenomena, like just me being in a bit different position, even if I'm really nice and transformational in my leadership style, that's still going to be part of it, right? Things like groupthink are more likely to occur. Other forms of obedience and conformity because people will be in fear of this individual. And it sets a stage so that other individuals that are modeling themselves off of them will act more like that too, instead of having a transformational leadership style, for example. So, like whatever, man, like it's just again, you can be in a tyrannical state or a democratic state, and they chose to have this individual. And some people call the United States Constitution an experiment, and we're seeing where this experiment will lead us, right?
Yeah, also, like, the difference between this presidency and the last one is that now he won the Senate, the Republicans control the House. He has basically, he's going to have basically unchecked power.
Yeah, they want everything basically. It's like crazy.
So,
It's
like, like the US, they have the checks and balances, right? They have the judiciary, they have the Congress, and then they have the president. And one checks the other.
Yeah.
But here, he controls the Congress, he controls the court, the Supreme Court. So like he's basically gonna have unchecked power. There's no checks and balances anymore.
well, let's see what happens.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Like I just don't start killing people. Don't start killing journalists. Don't start killing news anchors. Like this is don't do these things, Trump.
Yeah.
Right? Don't start rallying people up into camps. Well,
And
we're
then
going to put them.
Canada's probably, we have our elections coming up here as well, right? This year or
Next
next
year.
year.
Yeah.
Right?
If
So-
it's gonna be.
Yeah. So conservatives are probably gonna come here as well. So
Well, we'll see.
It may happen early, the election here, actually.
Yeah, depends on the.
So that's two conservatives in North America.
Let's go.
Yeah,
You're a
like
Trump
yeah.
fan?
Over Kamala, yeah, man. Yeah. Or at least their policies.
I actually, people have all these kind of opinions about Trump, but this time, the Republican actually, as you say, control the Senate. The Republican doesn't equal to Trump. So why is that? If you don't like Trump, I can see why. But to put, the Senate and even the House, both
yeah, they
under
have
the-
everything now. Right?
So they have everything. That says something about Americans.
Yeah.
What's your opinion?
Yeah.
That's scary.
It's like
They-
it's exciting though.
Yeah. Also, there's some.
Stay positive, yeah.
Yeah.
As long as they don't start killing journalists and shit like that. Like you talk about free speech.
You're
but-
probably
Yeah.
a Kamala fan. I can probably tell. But he's
Well, the things I just identified are things I don't like about Republican or conservative approaches. Usually they're rooted in a religious fundamental context. Like, for example, Ben Shapiro was arguing with Destiny about funding for education. And Ben Shapiro has a canonical set of arguments based on his belief systems as a Jew. And that's fine, but he just doesn't actually, it means that he's incapable of responding appropriately to other questions. Like if we're going to put money in education, where should we put it? And he just says we shouldn't put any money in education because the real issue for him is that the nuclear family is broken. There needs to be a 2-parent family and then there won't be problems. But it's just not representative of reality. It's like, well, what world are we living in? And if this is the current world we're living in, we have to respond to this world, right? So if there's the plumbing is broken in the house. Sorry.
Mostly a North American thing, the whole divorce situation.
Hmm?
If I'm not mistaken, it's more prevalent in North America.
That's everywhere.
I don't have any data on it, but we can think about that. Yeah.
So I remember looking into that.
Think about this. Kamala was a candidate by accident.
also he
She
didn't have
wasn't
enough-
ready. She wasn't ready to be the real candidate.
Mm.
Biden is, and sometimes it was the
Yeah, they threw her in there in September, right? So
Planet.
she only had like
And,
2 to 3 months to
She
prepare.
was protected
Not enough time for Joe Rogan.
You know, face to face, the debate. Trump was
It was Biden, all of a sudden.
with
they
the
threw
press,
it.
with the press. She's not really the real candidate. Well,
Yeah, people have made that
president.
criticism.
In
I
this
think,
case,
mhm. But it's still legitimate because they voted in Biden and the vice president. If the president is out, then the vice president takes her place. So whatever. Like, does it really matter at the end of the day? I just think that like people need to be explicit about certain policies and values and then discuss the means to achieve those ends, right? And we want that to be representative of reality, not some, like if it's a religious thing, some scriptural book that doesn't deal with issues.
mhm.
And there's a lot of data like on addictions, for example, or like homelessness. There are ways that we can appropriately deal with social problems that we need the government to do. We can't just do it in our own little small communities. And so like a treatment, restorative approach towards addictions in contrast to a retributive punishment style in the courts, right? And it reduces the amount of crime from people that are addicts or their probability of being addicted and relapsing by like half in certain cases, right? Depending on what the addiction is and other things. And so
Another comment I heard is the victory is also due to like in the recent years the American society going towards left too much, like the political correctness, like the woke, like a lot of those things scare people, you promote critical thinking, you promote free speech, but if you go left too far, then there's some topic they say the left side is a taboo. You couldn't even touch it,
Right.
So that's probably also caused the reactions,
on either end of the extreme, you're
Yeah.
going to lose your rights, but for different reasons.
Mhm.
Right? So there's a conservative removal of free speech and censorship. For example, like removing critical race theory, just saying that racism doesn't exist. And that's not true. Or saying evolution is not true and removing that, right? And on the other side, I'm just saying that that's a thing, right? On the other side, it's the woke mind virus approach towards not talking about like trans stuff or sexism or racism. And a DEI approach that it conceptually doesn't really make sense from a meritocracy perspective, right? And so that's why I think, like, for the Americans, my solution to their thing is just have a centrist party. Just go through, even if it takes you 40 years, it doesn't really matter. Like, don't be narrow-minded on the next election. Just figure out a way to have a centrist party that is objective, that focuses on evidence, and is reasonable. And I think that you would get more people that gravitate towards that than just being stuck in this polar opposite of these extremes. And so, because it just becomes a false dichotomy. Like, it's not one or the other. There may be somebody else that can better represent what the needs are of the people and then put a voice to that,
What about like then how different each state is compared to each other? Like some states differ more than countries do. Some states, like how do you cater to everyone? That's the challenge.
That's a problem of utilitarianism,
Mm.
right? That the right thing to do is the greatest happiness for the greatest number.
Mm.
And so it's like,
Democracy.
it's like the one guy without an umbrella, just, well, it sucks. We're going in the rain. What do you want to say? And I think that it doesn't have to be so like blanket, like approach. Like, there's nothing about blanket approach to everything. I think that for specific issues, we can look at specific areas and discuss what's needed and then distribute. Like, it's the golden mean from Aristotle.
Yeah.
There's the guy who's super jacked. He's like, I need 2 chickens. And then there's like, a kid who can eat like half a chicken breast. You don't give a full chicken to the kid. And then the guy who needs it, who's like carrying wood back to the village or whatever, just doesn't have enough nutrients, right? The golden mean is proportioning out resources based on need. And so going back to the education example, it's not appropriate to say that there is no need there or that the outcomes wouldn't be different. And to apply, for Ben Shapiro, to apply an idealized framework, the nuclear family is the right way, and that's how we avoid these problems in general, is just inappropriate to what's going on right now. You can try to do that, and you can support, healthy relationships independent of any scripture. And that's great, but we need to look at what kids need today in school, and then do our best as a community to provide that to them.
But with criteria, do you think it's an inappropriate or appropriate? Is according to your opinion, or
Well, okay, so
what do you say is inappropriate, for example?
in what context?
You said this is inappropriate in your.
Can I take a call?
Yeah, come back. Yeah. So it's inappropriate. So, like, for example, in the talk on Lex Friedman with Destiny and Ben Shapiro, Destiny cited two facts that increase the educational quality for students. One is air conditioning, because they're coming from the States and it gets pretty hot down there. Kids are more likely to stay in class if it's air conditioned. And then the other one is food. If they're malnutritioned, then they can't even really understand what's being said to them, right? Their basic needs aren't being met. And so investing in children would actually reduce crime, having after school programs. Like community psychologists know through studying human nature what the best approach is for like being proactive with crime, for example. But to do nothing is inappropriate.
Some people prefer police, who is very strict with the guns. Other people say, no, please don't use the violence with the police. So it's different. For example, Trump is a businessman. He's not a politician. He never generates ideas. He collects ideas, and he's the speaker.
Sure.
For many people.
Yeah.
The people want to hear what he said. It's not Gandhi or Nelson Mandela. Who is generating ideas, inspiring leaderships. No. Tell me what I want to.
Well, people don't care about that, like especially if you're religious. His function is not to be a prophet. His function is to, help you put food on the table, if you want to frame it that way. Or if it's from a xenophobic perspective, which is part of what the MAGA approach is, and a white supremacist approach, then I'm just saying, if you want to say that, and there are some people that are in that, right? Then they may perceive him as fulfilling those ends, independent of whether it's moral or not, right? And that comes back to Canada. What does it mean to be Canadian? Does it mean that you're like Caucasian? Well, no, that's not what Canadian values are. Because again, if you go from the origin of who was born in that land, my family is not from here, right? So am I Canadian? Well, you would say no under that.
If you're in Canada, you are supposed to assimilate these values and enrich, but don't try to change or to impose your values to Canadian people.
That's more the American approach. I think the Canadian approach is this cultural melting pot where we allow each other to change each other, which is not necessarily bad.
Depends.
But don't we also have to compare Canada as a country to other countries who, say, for example, have a different system in place and see how prosperous is Canada, how successful are we? What do the income levels look like? What is the education system?
The empirical, of course.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can argue the point that Canada would be better off if we had that approach, which is that we had Canadian values that a democracy agrees upon, and everybody assimilates those values, because then it becomes a much more coherent. It's like an idea. You know what I mean? It's like a theory, like a method, a system. It's not like, oh, this over here and this over here. No, it has to make sense. And so when something makes sense for everybody who comes in from all these different places all over the world, then maybe we have a much more functional society, as opposed to everybody just bringing in their own thing and doing whatever. Like, I don't even know what Canada is. I don't even know.
But even if you're,
tradition,
history. Yes. Yeah.
So that's why I believe it's a good place for a melting pot. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go.
I believe that's why it's a melting pot, because Canada doesn't really have that much history like they have the natives, of course, and like it's their own place, technically. And everyone else that comes here, it's like basically everyone does their own thing, and it's like compared to other countries I've seen, it like lacks community. Like the only communities that exist are within the same people. All the Indians, St. Clair, all the Italians, well, Portugal, all Portuguese, Mississaugas, all other smaller groups. Doesn't have that like mass unity to it. Yes, maybe yet. I don't know.
It's hard. I think the yet thing is important because it's this globalization phenomena, right? And I think that this is a problem of all countries, really, and with immigration, and I think identifying what it means to be Canadian, and then people that want to live here consenting to that, to taking on that as part of their identity, and it's like, because I look at it this way. I want to say, like, there are lots of beautiful, great things out there that I don't even know about. And if you think that this is a nice place and you want to bring those beautiful, great things over here, that's amazing. Show me the way. You know, like that's the love of wisdom, you know, or the love of goodness, right? Like let's bring that over. But if it's just like the Indian government assassinating Sikh, you know, people like got representatives of their own subculture within India, that's not appropriate. And like Trudeau, like maybe they just didn't know how to manage this properly, but just request an international investigation. You know what I mean? That way you don't have the Prime Minister of India just being like, "Man, you're bad." You know, how dare you accuse us of something? Well, maybe because you did it. You know, like why? What benefit does Canada have to just throw random accusations out there? And I think there's something to be said about countries just taking responsibility, saying, you know what, we didn't know about this, and we're going to take responsibility. We want you to know that you can trust us. That's way better than just getting these snarky images of the PM of India being like smug about shit. It's like, fuck you, bro. You know, like if there's evidence to show that something occurred, and that goes for Trump too. It goes for all leaders. And for myself, like I make an avid point that when I make a mistake, I accept responsibility and then I give an action plan on how I will not repeat it. And that will increase your trust for me. You're like, okay. And then if I do it, you're like, Achilles fucked up. And then he was responsible with whatever it was that occurred, you know? And so, I don't
know if it's true or not, you know, but I watched clips of the Congress debate between the conservative leader and Trudeau. Okay. So it's also about the foreign interferences. I think the conservative is accusing Trudeau being very slow in responding. You know, the intelligence agents has already got informations, and then they send a report to maybe his leader of the staff, and they sit there for like 50 days, and then they didn't take any actions, you know.
Okay.
And basically, you know, something like Trudeau didn't give a satisfying answer. The thing is, these days, the authority are being accused of very bureaucratic, you know, everything very slow, and then the foreign interference. You know, there's nothing to stop them. Like the Chinese have overseas police stations, you know, trying to buy out the energy, you know, and then in US, you know, they got FBI, they have CIA, you know, and they arrested, you know, some spies, you know, that sent by the Chinese government. But here is like, you know, you don't know, you know, it's like everything's so slow, you know, you can see from the immigration, you can see everywhere, you know, and then you have such a big government, you know, the staff, you know, but you know, the efficiency is very, very low. So that's what I heard. You know, I don't know if it's true or not, you know. But that's
we're not spending what we should be on defense in Canada, and that's very concerning because of climate change and the Arctic thawing out, and so China and or Russia claiming Canadian territory as their own, and we're kind of just like in the shadow of the United States, and a lot of threatening countries just don't dare to fuck with us because we're almost like another state, but. You know, it's not
really, we, you know, is the royal, you know, the RMCA as efficient as CIA, FBI, you know.
Not necessarily, but I just mean our relationship with the United States gives us protection.
The
Right?
Five Eyes, Australia, United States, you have intelligence services collaborating all together. So in this case, Canada is, I think we are in safety here,
but we have less control because we're relying on other countries. And to the point about unity, maybe that's why the systems are not operating, because there's no unity anywhere. Nothing is really strong in Canada. You can't point to any system in Canada and say that's really, really strong.
Exactly.
You can't do that.
I mean, theoretically, we have the protection from the US. Maybe we don't have to spend the much dollar on the defense, on the military. But when we concretely talking about, you know, like you just mentioned an example, you know, some leader got assassinated in Canada, you know, and then what did Canada do? Did the US did something to protect that? No. You know, all we see is like, we don't know is there any system in Canada.
Yeah, you can't be a pacifist because like the predator is going to eat you, right? You can't argue with the bear. and you can't say that the bear doesn't exist, you know? And so,
I
Yeah.
heard even like the Revolutionary Guard of Iran
mhm.
has some buildings, has some properties, even in Canada,
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with, I don't think that regime should own property here. I think Iranian people can for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
But I wouldn't support like a terrorist organization that like is directly against our entire society.
Yeah.
Like that's very stupid.
And they
Like,
own property. They're just
Yeah.
chilling.
No,
barbecues,
like,
whatever.
it's not-
Paying their taxes.
Yeah.
Because the Canada, the impression is the Canada is so relaxed.
Yeah, it's a melting pot. Everybody come here. It's
Yeah,
good
and
time.
they welcome everybody.
Nobody cares,
Well,
whatever.
and you're harboring terrorists, right? And
Yeah.
It's just waiting to grow and then the next 9/11 occurs, right?
Right,
The CN
yeah.
Tower falls.
Right.
So it's like
Yeah.
that, if that fucking happened,
Yeah.
Canadians would be very different. Like then you would see what it means to be, if you don't give a fuck that the CN Tower fell down, you're not Canadian.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you have a citizenship or not.
Yeah.
Right? Like that should mean something to you.
But
Just like if the Statue of Liberty fell.
Sure, as a society, you need values. It's one of the pillars. For example, many examples, Syrians, many empires, Babylonian, the ones they don't have this one society with pillars, not only militaries. This society is not the same, it's another country. So in my humble opinion, if we are Christian values, we should be all together Christian values. If we are Greek Romans values, we should have these Greek Roman values. Otherwise, we're changing, we are in another country.
Okay.
This is my only, preserve your values, and you have your own country, the glue for all the people.
You heard it here. Christian values for Canada.
Okay. Well, what are Christian values? Like,
No, forget the melting pot. Christian.
yeah, I don't know. I think it's
Joking.
philosophical values for Canada, which includes Christians if you need.
Sure, yeah.
That's America.
free speech.
We're used to.
Yeah, it used to be, I guess.
Okay, so I think that was a good little introduction to what we're like the election stuff. Like I wish the best for the Americans and the rest of the world, and we're gonna kind of have to just ride this out.
And one other thing, how would that impact Canada?
Well, the tariffs can definitely impact trade between the United States and Canada for sure. Depending on what he means by this deportation thing, is he just going to be like pushing hundreds of thousands of people like north and south? That's kind of like, what's that mean?
But wasn't the Canada and the US and Mexico have a North
agreement.
American agreement?
Yeah, but he could just pull out of these kinds of things. Who knows? Right. And then the other thing too is like if he says he's not gonna, if any country in NATO is not doing their 2%, he's not going to protect them. So that means that we could be open for attack. So that shadow of the US that's protecting us, it may not exist anymore.
What is the 2%?
You have to be in NATO. The agreement is that you have 2% of your GDP put towards military spending.
Oh.
And so we're not
We're
at
probably
that.
not doing that.
No.
We're way below it.
Yeah. And so it's like,
Weak ass country.
yeah. And so it's,
Yeah, sorry. No, sorry. That's what we'll say. Sorry.
I said that's not a good thing, and I understand that we want to put our resources in other areas, but you can't leave yourself open to attack. Then it's too late.
Isn't
Yeah,
it
you-
broke?
It's just resources are being allocated in different places,
DEI, so the bullshit, whatever, right?
Well, maybe we can be empirical and talk about it, you know what I mean? And say, where's money actually going? So, okay. I'm going to end this video here and then we'll do another one.